Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a top suspect in Rwanda's genocide of the Tutsis is arrested in a South African vineyard. Former police officer Fulgence Kayishema is suspected of orchestrating the murder of thousands at a church massacre in 1994. Also, as the continent celebrates its successes and contemplates how to overcome shared challenges on Africa Day, the organisation from which the commemoration sprung, the African Union, also marks its 60th anniversary. And in Tunisia, flower distillation is an extra source of spring income for many families in the coastal region of Cap Bon. Peak distillation seasons between April and May as the bitter oranges bloom. But first, a former Rwandan police officer wanted in connection to the slaughter of thousands of people during his country's 1994 genocide has been arrested in South Africa. The US had offered a $5 million reward for information leading to Fulgence Kayishema's arrest. Our Nadine Tron brings us more from Cape Town.
The United Nations Residual Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda thanked South Africa for its crucial role in the capture of one of its most wanted fugitives. Kayishema was on Interpol's red list for more than 20 years, using multiple aliases and falsified documents to flee across the continent and abroad before he was arrested in Cape Town on Wednesday. The South African police services say they found him living on a grape farm in the Paarl Valley under an alias. Kayishema is accused of buying and pouring petrol on a Nyange church, which was then set alight to murder the more than 2,000 men, women, children and elderly refugees inside. On the 15th of April 1994, Kayishema allegedly then bulldozed the building to kill and bury the survivors inside. He then made sure their corpses were buried in a mass grave nearby. Kayishema will appear in the Cape Town Magistrates Court on Friday, pending his extradition to Rwanda. Only 3 more accused by the United Nations Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda are still at large. The United Nations chief prosecutor in the matter, Serge Bramis, says his office will not rest until justice is served for the victims and survivors of the Tutsi genocide.
Now, Senegal's opposition coalition is calling for nationwide demonstrations in protest over rape charges brought against their leader. Ousmane Sonko is now waiting for a decision to be handed down by judges on June 1st. If he's found guilty, he would be legally prevented from running in 2024 elections. He's called on his supporters to march with him to Dakar from his home city of Ziguinchor. Sam Bradpeace brings us more.
The Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko continues to insist that there simply isn't any evidence to prosecute him on these rape charges. In a video posted on Wednesday, he said that the accusations against him were part of a wider government conspiracy to sideline him from the 2024 presidential race. He called on his supporters to march on Dakar.
I will fight with everything I have against this injustice. I am calling for all Senegalese to join us, because if Macky Sall gets what he wants, nothing will stop him. It will be a complete dictatorship.
The government, meanwhile, has promised a tough response.
We can see that Ousmane Sonko is manipulating the situation. He does not respect the court. Public order will be maintained, whatever it costs. We won't let anyone disrupt the peace of the Senegalese people.
A verdict on Mr. Sonko's case isn't expected until June the 1st. It will likely have major political ramifications.
Sam Bradpeace there for us. Now, May 25th is a big day for commemorations on the continent. It marks both the 60th anniversary of the African Union and Africa Day. A double reason to celebrate and break down the successes and common challenges faced across the region. Our correspondent Clotilde Azar brings us more from Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital where the African Union is headquartered.
Thank you. It is a day to commemorate the pioneers of African Union, launched in 1963, date of the first meeting of African Organization of Unity in Addis Ababa. It is time also to celebrate achievements completed in the past, but it's also time to tackle the today and future issues. Indeed, African Union has succeeded in achieving political independence of the continent, but there are still many challenges to overcome on the road of economical independence, according to Jean Mfassoni, special advisor of the chairperson of African Union.
We need to pool the many resources that we have together. We need to ensure peace and security on the continent, silence the weapons, make the agreements on the Continental African Free Trade Zone operational, and make it possible, when we have peace, to facilitate the movement of Africans within their continent, free movement of people, but also of goods and of capital.
Mais aussi des personnes et des capitaux.
The president of African Union gave a speech at the headquarters. He insisted on the fact that Africa must give itself the means to have a strong agricultural sector, to be less vulnerable to inflation and reach food security. He also addressed the need for dialogue in Sudan as the war continues there, and he concluded his speech speaking about youth, African youth, wishing them protection, education and employment for a better future.
Clotilde Azar there for us in Addis Ababa. Now, there's growing frustration in Guinea over the military leaders' overseeing of a return to democratic rule. Anti-government protests have been ramping up since last summer, and opposition parties and civil society groups say that at least 24 people have been killed in crackdowns. Caroline Lamboulé tells us more.
Spattered with blood, this is where the family of Boubacar Diallo say he was shot dead by police just in front of the family home. It was around 2 weeks ago, during a protest against Guinea's military government in Conakry.
I was at my neighbour's when I heard that the police had shot a young man. I started to imagine many things because I had left my little brother at home. It was only when we got to the hospital that I realised it was him. I will never forgive those who killed him.
His friend Mamadou recalls what happened that day.
The cops came to park their pickup and then walked into the neighborhood while shooting at people. They shot my friend in front of his house. We took him to the nearest hospital, but his intestines had spilled out. He died during the night.
His family has kept the clothes he was wearing in the hopes it could serve as proof in a police investigation. But so far, none has been opened. 7 people, including Boubacar, were killed that same day, according to opposition parties and civil society groups. The prosecutor general said 3 people had been killed. A day later, the prime minister had this remark.
These calls to protest are very regrettable, but it's their sponsors who are solely responsible for this.
The military authorities dislodged President Alpha Condé in a coup in 2021. Since then, they've banned protests and promised a return to civilian rule by the end of 2024, a timeline which the opposition has rejected, raising concerns about growing authoritarianism in the country.
Now, DR Congolese President Félix Tshisekedi has arrived in Beijing for the start of a state visit. He'll be in the country until the 29th. The two nations have a long economic relationship, and Kinshasa will be hoping to up its stake in a joint cobalt and copper venture with Chinese firms, which currently sees the African nation get currently only a little over 30% of the deal. An historic tree that served as a symbol of Sierra Leone's been felled in a storm in Freetown. The 230-foot-tall tree, thought to be about 400 years old and known as the cotton tree, was downed on Wednesday. President Julius Maada Bio said that the nation will feel its loss starkly, and on Thursday, hundreds of locals gathered around it to mourn. According to legend, slaves who won their freedom fighting with the British in the American War of Independence prayed under the tree when they arrived in West Africa. And finally, in Tunisia, flower distillation is an extra source of spring income for many families in the coastal region of Cap Bon. The skill has a long tradition and is based on ancient techniques that rely on the use of special stills called alembics. Peak distillation season is between April and May as the bitter oranges blossom. Our correspondents report.
On the highway to Nabil, 60 kilometers from Tunis, people on the side of the road sell fishkas, round bottles filled with the essences of flowers like orange blossom, rosehip, rose and geranium. For 5 months of the year, women harvest or buy these flowers for distillation. It all starts in the central market where Boubacar sells roses in bulk.
They bring the roses from Kairouan to be sold here. Clients buy 2 kilos, 10 kilos sometimes. It's used for pomegranate salads, strawberries, or to clean one's face, but also medicine for the eyes.
Due to a meager harvest, the price of roses went up a bit this year. But that doesn't stop Mongia. Her distillation skills have been passed down from mother to daughter for generations.
So there, I put the roses to boil in a copper vessel. I shut it firmly and seal the ceramic lid to prevent leaks.
Then she patiently monitors the process, sometimes cooling the still before she can extract a few precious drops of rosewater. Every season yields about 60 bottles, which Mongia sells by word of mouth.
This allows me to pay for my medicine, food, clothes, everything. My husband has a very small pension. Our children are married, and they're already struggling with the economic crisis.
Other women have created their own brands, like Aziza, who we meet at a rose festival in Tunis. She's been selling flower essence for 28 years.
I'm finally doing well this year, at last, after 3 years. Even though the economic crisis has gotten really bad. It's because of our work, and I have my son Hamza who works with me. I also have 6 sisters who are all involved.
International demand for flower water and essential oils is on the rise. Tunisian businesses are hoping they can capture some of that market.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Till then, take care. Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith.
All the latest in politics, economics and the arts in Africa on France 24. Our journalists are in every region, every country, to report on the emergence of a continent of unparalleled riches. Bringing you Africa's stories on France 24.
Good, thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.